Hello friends, welcome to our channel Knowledge Amplifier. So in my previous videos, I already discussed in detail how you can create external stage to populate the data from S3 location to a particular Snowflake table, right? And to create the external stage, we basically used the secret key and access key of our AWS account. Now, when you are working in a real project, then to create this stage, if you use this kind of secrets directly as hard-coded value in your code, that will reduce the overall security of your system. So it is always suggested that don't use any access key or secret key directly in your code. Okay. So in this video, I am going to discuss that apart from using those secret credentials, how we can access the Amazon S3 data, which is basically kind of acting like external stage, using AWS IAM role. Okay, so regarding this IAM role, already we have seen many use cases in our earlier projects. Just let me give you a quick recap. So what is IAM role? An IAM role is an IAM identity that you can create in your account that has specific permission. Okay, you can use those roles to delegate access to users or applications or services that don't normally have access to your AWS resources. Like for example, suppose you are using one AWS Lambda, and using that Lambda using Boto 3, you are basically trying to execute certain tasks in EMR or Glue, or maybe you are trying to use the AWS ACS or simple email service, these kind of services which the Lambda don't have access. So what we do generally, we create a role which is having all this access, AWS S3 full access, EMR access, Blue Console access. We give all this permission to that role and we assign that role to that Lambda. Then using that particular role, the Lambda basically uses these different services like EMR, Blue, ACS, etc., which generally the Lambda don't have. Okay. So that's what is written here. You can use the role to delegate. So delegate means nothing but the role will act like a representative to access the application or service that can be AWS microservice or something else, or some users that don't normally have access to some AWS resources. Okay, right? Now this is when we are considering one particular service may require other services, that time we create role. Sometimes it is also required that you need to give a third-party access to your AWS resources. Like for example, if you consider this scenario, that when you want to access the S3 data from Snowflake, Snowflake is basically acting like third-party resource. Okay, so to that Snowflake, you need to give S3 read access. So that kind of permission also we need to provide using IAM role. So how to do that, I am going to discuss. Okay. So no need to think much about this. I'll be telling you the steps. You can follow this. Just little intuition will be applying. So if you just see our AWS Role console, that time it will appear like this way. And then here, generally we choose AWS service, and then to which service we want to give certain roles. We first choose that one. Like for example, to Lambda, we want to provide certain role. Then we choose Lambda. Then we click on next permission, and then we specify the permission whatever required, and then we create tags, and then we give some name of that role, and that's it. Our role will be created for that particular AWS service, right? But now we want to create role which should be accessible by some third-party service. Here our third-party service is Snowflake. So for that we cannot use this first option. The first option is for AWS services, EC2, there is Elastic Compute Cloud or Lambda or something else. If you see the second option here, it is clearly written belonging to you or third party. Okay, another AWS account. So what we have to do, we have to use the second option. Obviously not third option, because you are seeing that third option is web identity. This is for Cognito, Google, Facebook, all these things. www clearly written, right? So this will not for Snowflake, and this is for your corporate directory. Again, this is also not possible. So the first one, third one, fourth one not possible. So obviously we have to go with the second one. So if you click on second one, you will be getting this kind of form. Okay. So here you need to provide the account ID. So what it is mentioning, specify the accounts that can use the role. Okay. So here in this account ID, we need to specify that account which will use this role to access certain AWS services on our behalf. Okay, like for example, Snowflake should access the AWS S3, which is acting like external stage, right? So here the account ID should be of Snowflake. Okay, that we need to provide. Okay, right? And here options, here it is showing, if you see, require external ID, best practice when a third party will assume this role. So AWS is telling us that you should use this option as a good practice when a third party will assume this role. Yes, we want to create this role for third party also. So what we'll do, we'll check this particular option also. So once we check this option, it is clearly explaining what actually it is happening. That is, you can increase the security of your role by requiring an optional external identifier. So what will happen when the external, that third party will try to use this particular role, this is kind of acting like one more layer of security. So that external ID, one string value, it should match with that third party, whatever we are mentioning here. So if it will match, then that third party can use this particular role like that something. Okay. So here we need to fill up the external ID also. So now the external ID from where we will get from Snowflake. Okay. That is, when Snowflake will try to assume this particular role which we are creating, so what should be the external ID or that part of the string which it will try to match? That particular string we will be getting from Snowflake. Okay, but for the time being, what we can do, we can fill some dummy parameter, and later when we will create integration object which will basically act like integration in between Snowflake and S3, that time we will be getting actual external ID, and that time we will modify the role and we'll put here. Okay, so for the time being, what we'll do, we are putting all these 0 values. Okay, right? So this is a dummy value. So currently we are telling AWS that when the third party will try to assume this particular role, the external ID string should match with this one, and then only it is accessible. And then similarly here, if you see, specify accounts that can use this role. Okay, so that is, we have to specify that account ID which will basically use this particular AWS role from third party. Okay, so currently with respect to Snowflake, we are not having the account ID. So what we will do, we will basically put our AWS accounts account ID here. Later we will modify this part also. Okay, right? Now this time it might appear a bit confusing, but when you will see the steps, it will be very easy. Okay, so what I did, first I went to create a new role, and I have taken the second option, that is here clearly third party is written. Then account ID, something we have to fill. We have given tick to this first option, which is basically given as best practice, and external ID, which is basically nothing but a string which it will try to match while calling that role from third party. Okay, so that we are mentioning as a dummy value for the time being. And this account ID something, here we have to mention that account that basically will use this particular role. So currently we don't have this Snowflake account ID. So what we will do, we will put here our accounts account ID. Okay, AWS accounts account ID we will put here. Okay, and then later we will modify that so that Snowflake can use this particular AWS role, right? And then suppose I put my AWS accounts account ID. I'll be showing you how to get this account ID. You should put yours account ID only. Then you can go to next permission. Now here, this role should have access to AWS S3, because in S3 we are basically creating the external stage, right? So I'm choosing S3, and then I can go to create role. Okay, right? So once the role is created, the policy, okay, will look something like this way. Okay, so if you see that in condition part, string equal to that external ID, we have chosen this kind of dummy external ID, all 0 values. So the assume role will first check that whether this particular external ID string part is matching or not. That's why string equals here it is showing. And this principal. So what is principal? Principal is a person or service that can make a request for an action or operation on an AWS resource. Okay, right? So basically if you see this particular principal, this particular value will be basically what we are mentioning here. Okay, that is related to account ID. But here we need to provide that the principal should be Snowflake account, right? That Snowflake should access this AWS IAM role. So we have to modify this part as well as the external ID in future. Okay, So this is more or less the concept what I wanted to discuss. Now let me directly go to AWS Management Console. So if I go to S3, if you see here in S3, already I have created one bucket demo testing Snowflake. So here we will be creating our external stage, and let me go to AWS back, and here I'll be going back to IAM, and in IAM here I'll be going to roles. Okay, right? And in roles here I'll be going to create role, and here I'll be choosing the second option. As I have told you, I'll be making this particular one tick. I'll be putting 4, maybe 60 values. Account ID from her I will get. So all you need to do, go to your this particular name and then my security credentials. If you click, and then here it will open in a new window, and here you just copy this particular one. Okay, here you are seeing account ID. So here I'll be pasting that, right? And then I'll go to next permission. Here I will use S3, AWS S3 full access. Okay, right? So that the Snowflake can read the data from S3. I am not giving any other value. And then here role name I can give Snowflake access external stage. Okay, like this some name I am giving, and then it is having the policy AWS S3 full access. Then we can go to create role, right? So here our role is getting created. Okay, so if I go to this particular one, so if you see to permission is having S3 full access, and if you go to trust relationship, you will see the trusted third-party entity is this particular account. That is, this particular account can use this particular role as assume role and use the S3. Okay, and one more thing, while doing this particular access via that third party, this particular string should be equal to this particular value. Okay, right? We'll modify that later. No need to worry about a single thing. Okay, so now this part is done. All we need to do, we need to go to Snowflake. And here I'll be copying a piece of code which I'll be providing in the description box also. Let me explain one by one. So here we will execute this particular one first. Drop database if exists ramu. So it will drop the ramu database, and then here create database if not exists ramu. So ramu database is created, and then here we are basically using the ramu database. Here what we are doing, we are creating a table which is having the name video. Obviously it will be created in the ramu database in the public schema by default, and here we are mentioning sepal length with petal length as double type, and the class part as varchar. Okay, so that's how our schema is when we will be loading the CSV data from external stage. So that first 4 columns are basically double type, last one is basically string type. So that's why we have mentioned the DDL like this way. Then here what we are doing, we are basically creating the CSV file format with field delimited as comma, because that is comma separated values, and skip header 1 because in our CSV file the first row is basically header. So we are executing that, and then here this is the important part where we are creating the integration object which will basically use for communication in between the Snowflake and our S3. Okay, so here what we are doing, create or replace storage integration S3 int. So I am giving the S3 int name, you can specify any other name. Okay, type is external stage, storage provider S3, enabled equal to true, I'm keeping as it is, and storage AWS role ARN. So here we need to specify the role which we created. Okay, so I'll be going to my AWS, and here I'll be copying this particular role ARN which we created. Okay, that is this particular role just now we created, right? So the role ARN unique identifier we copied. We are pasting here storage allowed location. So we need to specify here the S3 bucket, which is basically we are using for external stage creation. So that S3 bucket is basically this particular one, demo testing Snowflake, which we already created, right? So here I'll be keeping that, and comment, you can, if you want, you can specify something. So let us just run this particular one, and see here it is mentioning insufficient privilege to operate on integration S3. This is happening because our default role is sysadmin. So to do this kind of activity, your role should be account admin. Okay, so I'm changing that to account admin. So here my particular profile got changed. Here in select role we basically change from sysadmin to account admin. Okay, so now we can execute this particular storage integration object creation. Okay, so see, integration S3M successfully created. So now if we describe that integration object, here we will be getting some details. Okay, so AWS Role ARN is something which we use to create the integration object itself. So I already told you, right, while discussing the theory, that external ID something will be getting from Snowflake. For the time being, we'll be using dummy external ID. See, here we are getting actual external ID. So we will copy that. We'll go back to our AWS, and here we will basically edit this trust relationship, and then here we will be changing this particular external ID to this one. Okay, so it will try to match this particular external ID while assuming the role. And apart from that, storage AWS IAM user ARN, this particular also something that we need to change. That is, I have told you, right, that what account ID we need to mention. If you see this particular one, that is specify account that can use this role. So that time we used our AWS account ID only, but that particular account ID should be Snowflake's account ID, so that Snowflake can assume this particular role and use that. So basically all we need to do, we need to copy this particular one and then we need to paste it here in this principal. Okay, so that this particular role can be accessed by this particular principal automatically, and then these three location also can be accessed. Okay, right, so these are the two things what you need to update, and then here you can click on update. So see, trusted entity, so trusted third party is now this one, so this can call this particular role, okay, automatically, and while calling it will check whether this string is matching with this particular value or not. That's it. Okay, right, so here we are almost done, and then here we can create our external stage. So earlier we used this 3 access key secret key, which basically decrease the overall security, right? This time we no need to use that. All you need to mention storage integration equal to S3M, that is, we are specifying our storage integration name what we created using that assume role. Okay, and file format like how we mentioned that we are mentioning. So here we are creating the stage with the name Snowsimple. URL we are mentioning the S3 URL where basically our stage will be created. Okay, right, we can run this particular one and see our stage is created. Now we can basically use our normal queries like list @ramu.public.snowsimple to list on all the elements or data files present in the S3 location. So currently nothing is coming because S3 is empty. Let me upload something. I will go to this particular one, and here I will click on upload. I will be going to add files. I will be uploading ID, series or CSV, and here it will take some time to upload depending on file size. Once it is uploaded, here I am seeing, now if I do list @ramu.public.snowsimple, I'll be basically getting this file. Okay, now if I want to copy the file from that external stage to our video table which we created, just we need to execute this copy command. Okay, right, it is executing, and then to access that we can use select star from video. Okay, right, so if you see that the data is now loaded in our table. Okay, so this is all about how we can use IAM role to create the external stage pointing to S3 location. So we need to create one AWS role, and that role should be used by some third party. So that third party account ID we are mentioning, and what is the string which will match for as external ID that we are specifying here. Okay, right, I hope you have understood this. If you find this video helpful, then please like, share and comment. Subscribe to our channel if you have not subscribed till now, and don't forget to press the bell icon to get the notification of all latest videos. Thank you.